Hey, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Awesome. So we are at time. Well, we're over time. Apologies. So this is the 25th of January delivery weekly call. So we haven't got any announcements, but do have a little read down on the agenda to Monday's call, because we're a few on there. On the discussion points, I wanted to chat just a little bit about release manager metrics. So these have been sort of ongoing discussion actually for quite a long time, but they've cropped up quite a bit through our OKR discussions. And I think we will, we're going to need to find a way to do something so that we can actually plan what's the right stuff to focus on and actually also track our progress there. So I just wanted to share in a link here. I think most of you have seen it because I think most of you have commented already. But one of the things that would be super useful is to sort of be able to say, so for example, we have a process like a deployment, for example, and we say that a failure is 5 manual steps and takes us 3 hours. Great. Now, if we only have one failure each month, that's not a super amount of work. But if we have 50% of all deployments failing, that's quite a lot more work. And then similar sort of thing on releases. Does anybody have any bright ideas about how we can ideally easily, but at least definitely track percentage of failures coming from deployments and releases? They don't have to be the same thing.
Could we start with pipeline metrics, right? Like, so if a coordinated pipeline, like the auto deploy pipelines fail for whatever reason, like sometimes it might be something simple, but is that like a way to start? Like, is that what we mean by tracking problems with deployments? Like, I'm trying to think of some way we can, what do we actually define as a failure in a deployment or a problem deployment, right? And I guess it's most of the time a pipeline fails and then a release manager gets notified about it. Maybe it's something simple, or maybe it leads to an incident, but maybe starting with pipeline metrics. Like, if we know auto deploy pipelines fail twice a day, then we should really go back and find out why they were and maybe rate them afterwards or something. I'm not sure.
We already have this metric. We look at this every week. Let me share the screen. For deployments, we don't have for the other process, but here, this section here, if you go there, here's your number. That's the thing, right? So this is counting since between, so no, this is counting coordinated pipeline by status since the last successful one. So what this tells us is that for this period of time, from the 21st to the 23rd, we had 13 failed pipeline since the last successful pipeline on coordinated pipeline. So that's exactly the number you want. And it goes down to 0 when you actually have a successful deployment.
So
I guess,
how would you translate that? Like, so if we were to roll this up, like, and we were like, what's the metric that we would pull from that?
because I guess that was caused by one incident, right? Like,
Yep.
and that's what we're trying to capture here really is, are we trying to capture like the number of incidents, but also how difficult they were? Is that the 2 dimensions that we're trying to capture here?
Well, this one, it captures only one single information, which is the unit is the number of deployments. So if you want to see the percentage, maybe we want to check this with what was the tagged or the production promotion. I mean, it doesn't have to be production promotion, right? Because this is counting tag. It's based on tagged package. So you want to see how that number compares to the number of tagged package in the same, I would say same amount in the same time, but this is not entirely correct. So let me, I'm gonna share screen again. So because that's probably, we need someone that has more metrics experience than me. But basically, if we look at, so no, this is the thing. So those two numbers are the important one, but they are based on a different assumption. So this one tells you the number of packages that we tagged in the past 24 hours. So it's a rolling window. So that's the data point, right? So as we can see here, the good thing is that we have the red bar on both graphs, right? So starting here, we started having failed pipelines. So as we keep tagging, we still have increase of failure. So every pipeline failed. The problem though is that we can't really compare this based on this, because over the weekend we were tagging nothing, but we will still had until the next successful deployment, right? But this is a very specific edge case, because so what I wanted to say here is that the graphs above, it gives you information over the last 24 hours, while the graphs below takes in memory the status since the last successful deployment. So I don't know if someone has some clever math ideas to make a percentage out of it, or if we want to get a value over a week instead. So number of package tagged in a week and number of failed deployment.
Because I guess it's like we looking at Amy's comment, we want to get how brittle it was, right? So or even if we say over the week, how brittle was auto deploy this week? Because we know auto deploy, the is in terms of the known manual steps is quite low. There's really just promote, right? Like that's the only thing. So whereas for security releases, it's different. There's a lot of manual steps, so the complexity is all on that side. So for deployments, the manual steps is low, but I think the brittleness is pretty high. Like it fluctuates wildly, right? Like brittleness can definitely get us there on. So I think a combination of somehow reworking these metrics, we could get some kind of golden value that's like this week or whatever time period. You know, I guess it's like your typical SLI, SLO, right? Maybe thinking of it that way, like what's our deployment? I mean, we already kind of have a deployment SLO, but I think that's slightly more talking about like time to production and things like that. But I guess for us, we have kind of like an SLO for release manager that we would like, I don't know, 99.5 of deployments to not have release manager, not have failures or release manager involvement, right? And that's what we kind of, we want it to be not brittle. But then the second part is once it breaks, we often will do incident issues and stuff, but we need to turn that from that somehow. We actually need to data mine that somehow out and say, okay, it was brittle this week, and these are the incidents that, because it was, you know, these are the incidents that were causing the problems, and somehow we can extrapolate for that they were low effort or they were high effort or something out of that as well, right? But that's, I think, a lot more harder to discern than from just a simple metric. Like you might need labels on the incidents. Maybe if we tracking the amount, have we even got a metric where we can actually see how long auto deploys were blocked? Like just like a graph that's like, this is how long they were blocked,
That's
like
the
when they were blocked.
blockers, but it's super manual. But Ruben, like dive in here, like with your, if any of your traceability stuff improves on any of this stuff.
So we were just discussing this in Alessio's office hours, but we can have a metric that tracks the amount of time lost by failed jobs. So you track like from the time a job first fails to the time that it successfully passes, all that is lost time, including the time between retries. Like
so the manual delays and the time spent by running the job. So counting all of this together. And we were also discussing exactly the probably the number that you're looking for, because we were saying we don't really have metric for failed deployment pipeline, because the thing that I was showing right now is the accumulated deployment failure, which is a different, right? So is it kind of gives you an idea of the status of every auto deploy pipeline in between successes. While the information that you're looking for, if you want to get a percentage, is how many packages do not complete. for any reason, right? So we are now
Right.
counting not promoted, but we want to see everything. So for any reason, things that done
Exactly.
So it's not promoted plus something, right? So
that's it. Yeah, that's it. Because what I'm thinking with this metric, right? So I think it's slightly different from existing metrics we have in our team. I'm thinking of this one as being much more like our MTTP metric. So we get something which we can feed data into and come up with an overall single number that we can plot and put onto the infrastructure PIs. And at that point, we basically say, right now, release manager workload effort is 9 or whatever our number is, right? Whatever the scale is. And from there, we can set targets, and we can also have a kind of breakpoint where we go, release manager workload is unacceptably high. It's this month, it's been 15, the month before it was 18. And from there, we would say, we are now going to take this action. So for example, we could say, in the next quarter, we are going to only take OKRs that reduce that workload. As we dive into that workload, that's where we kind of need to know what feeds into this number. So we can say, actually, the reason it's so much higher is because deployments have been breaking 10 times more frequently than they used to. So what can we do there? Or we've added 20 manual steps to the security release process. So what can we do there? But we'll need to sort of, I think that's what's super hard about deployment SLA right now. If you try to use that number to plan something, it's very hard to figure out what you should plan, because it's really hard to work out what fed into that number and what caused the change. So those are kind of the bits that make this a little tricky, I think.
yeah. What is that?
Do we ever have a situation where you have like a big gap in auto deploy because of some incident or something, but release managers are not stressed?
I think release managers are always stressed, but
Yeah.
yes,
So
but
like even
you're not taking action. I think we have, but not for a while. But I think, like, for example, if you have something like Slack outage or something like that, right now that will block us, but you're not necessarily needing to do something.
yeah, but those are rare. So
Yeah, it's rare. It's definitely rare.
maybe we can use like time lost in failures as a kind of proxy metric for.
I think we probably can, to be honest, because I think that's going to be accurate enough. Like, we can probably make it useful enough. We can always iterate on this, right? So yeah, I think that probably is going to be good enough.
Talking about iteration, I'm thinking that probably we want, so instead of focusing directly on getting the right number, having a pool of things that are easier to understand, even though are not easy to show up, say on higher levels. So that's the number. So the workload is 10. Workload is 10 is great if you can get the number right. But because we don't have number at all, the only number we are those ones we're looking at, if we can sort something like, okay, we don't have idea of the overall numbers, but we can say time lost on doing things, time it takes to run releases of any type. I'm talking about patches and security, because the monthly release virtually takes no time. And then number of retries, wasted packages, all those things, right? And we start looking at those number, and then we do the data mining, right? As a human, let's say, how do we feel this week was? Because it's kind of the walkthrough that we do every week, right? But with more information. So this is what happened, and we can see by all the new metrics as well, and how does it feel? And then it may become easier to us to give a weight to those numbers, and to say, I don't know, maybe the number of manual job and retries takes for 50% of the value or the final value, right? So that metric has more is more meaningful because it's spread across every workday. And then you may say number of releases. Well, this doesn't really count that much, but the time it takes to complete the releases altogether has an important value compared to the number of days we have in a month, as an example, right? So you can say, well, if it takes a couple of days extra is not that much. Well, maybe true, but then if you are spending, 12 days a month, just doing manual work for releases, that's a huge indication, right? So it should bump up the number as well. But until we start seeing those values, because basically we are trying to get a magic number out of something that we don't know if we can track and how we can track. So if we can start seeing what we can track and how we feel about those, maybe it's gonna be easier to.
I have a question. So we are building the packages, and we are doing the building the packages continuously. And if some incident happen and we're not out to deploy those packages, are they kind of piling up? And when incident finished, do we kind of apply them subsequently, or we apply like the last version, or how it works?
The last version we promote one version. That's the thing. So I think you can see this here again. So if we look at everything, basically what you care about is the manual. So manual means this is the number of packages that are waiting to be promoted. So if it's one, yeah, it's one. But if you look at here, you have two, right? So it means that you are piling up. At this point in time, release managers, I would say, go here, 3. Release managers will just promote the last one, unless there are known reason to promote a previous one. But usually they will just deploy the more recent version.
And what's happened with the versions that wasn't promoted?
They show up here as not promoted. So we are kind of at this point in time, we're trying to keep this as an information about do we have an aggressive schedule in terms of deployment? So are we producing more packages than the one where we can actually deploy? This is what this number represents today. I don't think this will continue serving this purpose if we try to decouple tagging from deployment. So this was just an easy way to say, considering that this is a end-to-end process, it starts by tagging and completes by production deployment, not promoted is a good indication of wasted packages or wasted effort. But because of the design of the process, if we are gonna change the design of the process and say, let's tag every hour regardless, and then let's promote 10 times a day, whatever is the latest available package, then this makes no sense anymore. But you want to check off the things that we were discussing before, like how many coordinated pipeline didn't complete for some reason. That gives you the real failures in that case, right? Because you are decoupling the package creation. So then you may have another metrics, which is how often package creation fails, but that's kind of a gift to distribution, right? So we are counting, we keep them accountable in a certain sense, right? Because in that case, if something failed in building, we just get notified about it, but as the build itself is something that we are using as a client, right? So it can be.
I was thinking like maybe the good metric also, like not the one that we're looking for, but also the good one would be to count the time package produced and package hit production, but maybe it's kind of MTTP that we have, right?
I think that sounds quite close to MTTP. Yeah, that's right. And I think this would be in addition, right? I think it would be a keep MTTP, review that. That would be, like overall pipeline, like duration measure. And this one is release manager workload measure. And then we want to also probably have something which is release, an MTTP equivalent for releases. So like how healthy are releases? But I don't quite know what that would exactly look like. So, cool. All right, sounds good. Well, Alessio, I might catch up with you separately and actually figure out like how can we start working towards this. If anyone has any other comments or wants to interject in the conversation, please dive in on that issue. But I think this one would be a good one for us to start figuring out what we can pull together so that we can. What kind of the key things I'd love to be able to say is like, oh, if we just fixed, this task, we would see a decrease in release manager workload. We might have a little bit of work to do initially to try and figure out like, is it backports or security releases or deployments? Like, I think we can make some guesses, but it would be great if we actually had some data to show that. So yeah, I'll see what we can do to actually start measuring this. Awesome. Is there any other discussion topics people want to mention?
Well, there was something that came to my mind, still on the same topic, when Graham's was thinking about understanding the status of incident. So the causes. And this is more a question for Ruben. So the work you are doing, we are receiving webhooks for jobs right now, but I think there is also another webhook for issues. So if we could also add the webhook for issues for the production tracker, we may interject when the block deployments was added to something, when it was removed, and try to also count those information real time.
Yeah, we could do that. I
So
don't know
working
if
on the labels that affect our workload and show them, graph them, and see.
Automate that. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll add an issue for that.
Like even just using the blocks deployment label, right? You could have like a metric that's 1 or 0, like is deployments blocked 1 for how long, then it goes back to 0 when that incident is closed or whatever. And we might even be able to kind of see just in one simple line when were deployments blocked over the course of a week, maybe.
Even more than one. I mean, we want to know if there were multiple incidents, right? So you can even count the number of issues that had the thing.
True. Which over the last few days, yes, we definitely have had more than one at the same time. So
yeah, for sure.
I have another stupid question. When we have an incident, is it like the normal procedure that we stop deployment during the incident, like during all incidents, or some particular incidents?
Particular ones, yeah. So it depends on the sort of severity and what we know about the incident, but it's not all. It is, I'll ping you over the handbook page. There are certain severities that it's default assigned to, but then the engineer on call can adjust those.
Yeah, and we block promotion to production, actually, not all the deployment.
That's true.
Which
yes.
came to my mind as another idea, Ruben. I'm always relying on you. We should instrument the chat ops for locking environment to track when an environment is locked. Even only the things that we control ourselves. Maybe can lock from outside reason, but this is another information to give an idea of graphing environment contention over time.
Yeah, I think even just to understand if deploys are backing up because they're all locking on the one environment, it would be great actually if system starts looking at like the GitLab com repo locking as well, we could unify that with environment locking. So like, for example, if someone's rolling out a config change to an environment, if that was bound into the locking so a deployment couldn't happen to that, and then we could track that metric, because I think that would be very interesting as well to see how many times like people are getting held up on doing change issues. Like we do it, there's a lot of CRs that happen as well as deployments, and then hopefully we could get less of the situation of people pinging release managers to do change issues, because actually that is disruptive. Like it's totally fine, people need to do change issues, but just the whole coordination of it at the moment is it can be stressful if things are already happening and stuff.
Agreed. Yeah, release stage group are thinking about whether there's a feature they can think of as well, where someone could more easily use the environments page to see what's going on and also kind of request a hold on that environment. So yeah, exactly the same thing. Take away that manual coordination.
Yeah, I would love if they had the API for manually locking and line locking an environment. Just that feature alone, we could leverage so much. It would really be helpful.
If only we had environment across multiple projects.
That too, but at least we can write our pipelines to use the API to call. But yes, I do also agree. Environments across projects, group level environments would also be a game changer for us. That would be fantastic. But
awesome. Right, I'm gonna. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't get what Graham was saying entirely. Would you mind writing it down in the agenda?
So I'm going to move on. I want to stop the recording and give you a quick update. And I I have to leave on time. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the stopped recording.